Welcome to the $1 Million Multi-Op Podcast. Here, you're going to find education, entertainment, and a little inspiration on how to get to the next level. Are you a DJ company owner that's looking for the secret sauce? Congrats, you found it.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the $1 Million Multi-Op Podcast. I'm your host, David Osborne with BlueprintLearn.com. Today on the podcast, we got my friend Geoffrey Sandler from way up north dealing with snow. Welcome, Geoffrey.
Well,
You messaged me before we started. Sounds like you got some snow happening up where you are.
we did, yeah. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas here in Wisconsin.
When I know what the listing on Spotify and Apple Podcast looks like, it's hard to see when these things are released. We are recording this in mid-February of 2025. It'll release probably a month from now,
Yeah.
but we're in the winter, people, and we had our own snow. If you want to, you'd laugh at me. We had snow twice. And I think we had like 2 inches one time, maybe half of an inch.
Shut the entire city down for.
It did.
Lost their minds.
Kids out of school. We just don't have any infrastructure. We don't have trucks or salt or anything.
Right.
And, it's legitimately dangerous because people don't know what they're doing.
Right.
But, well, cool. So, I've known you for a few years, and I think we kind of started to learn about each other through Midwest DJs Live, both attending, both contributing in different ways. You've been on the board, right? You've helped with different aspects with planning, and then I've been involved quite a bit over the past few years, but I've really got to know more about your business and you. And Celebrations Entertainment is like a really awesome company that is awesome at a lot of different things. So why don't you share just kind of what your different categories, your different divisions are, just so we can kind of get a sense of who you are.
Yeah, my 8-second elevator speech is that we are a full-time event entertainment and production company that will do basically anything that people need us to do. We provide everything except for the guests, right? So what does that mean, right? That means that DJs and photo booths and lighting and casino entertainment and full AV production, whether it's just a 55-inch TV or whether it's a full, 40-foot LED video wall, whatever you need.
Yeah. So you're helping people celebrate whatever it takes.
Exactly. Yeah. With a lot of events.
And, you're well known for your MC work and your personality. But did you start, I'm not, every state and region's a little bit different with how things are structured.
Yeah.
Did you start as a DJ MC or were you always more focused on MCing?
Yeah, no, I actually started as a club DJ when I walked into a bar when I turned 18, because drinking age was 18 way back then. And there was this guy that was playing music. He had 2 turntables in front of him and a microphone up to his mouth and a crate full of records behind him. And he was controlling all of the energy in the bar. That's literally was the first time that I had ever seen a DJ live. Like, all of the school dances were Battle of the Bands. Nobody in my family had ever gotten married. So that was my first, a live DJ in front of me, and my jaw dropped and I was like, what is happening? Who is that? What does this guy do? And so I watched him, and then after a few nights I tapped him on the shoulder and said, how does somebody get to do something like this? And that's the moment that changed my life. So I got hired to DJ in that bar, kind of trained, not really, kind of learned on my own. And that, yeah, so I started as a club DJ. And then started doing weddings, and then built up my company, and we'll talk about all of that, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that, your first time seeing a DJ and just being kind of blown away. I remember the first time I saw a beat mixing DJ. Okay. I was on the dance floor at a wedding, and my mind was blown that you could combine songs. It was voodoo. I was like, how is he doing that? And I remember the first time I heard a mix show, and I was like, how are they combining so many tracks? It's like Ableton, oh, got it. But it's, that's really cool to hear kind of like that origin story of, you're walking in and you're instantly drawn to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I grew up as a theater geek, right? So
Yeah.
if I would have grown up as an alcoholic, I probably would have stopped before I even got to the DJ booth and turned left and, ordered a drink, and then I'd be a professional alcoholic. But I kept on going and noticed the DJ first, and that turned into be my life path, right?
Well, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. So, okay. So, you know, the celebration started with you as a DJ.
Yep.
And then at some point, you were like, let's add some other things. Let's add some photo booths. Let's add some other DJs maybe. And then it's really when you get into the casinos and when you get into the full AV, that's where I think you kind of start to leap off the page compared to the standard of the industry. Out of
Right.
like, poll the listeners, some people doing that, but that's kind of not the norm. So like, what drew you to kind of start doing these extra things that we don't typically think of as DJ services?
Yeah, well, the photo booths started really because of Mobile Beat um, uh, show that I used to go to every year in Las Vegas. Right now, it's called MEX and PBX, but the first alliteration of that show was Mobile Beat, and they had a trade show, and so in 2005 or 2006, I walked the trade show, and you're looking at all of the really cool speakers and the microphones and all of the cool stuff that we had back then, and all of a sudden there was this guy that had a photo booth, and I was like, whoa, that's cool. And so I talked to him, and I ended up buying one right there, and so that was how I got into that. And then I realized that, wow, we could do so many more things than just DJing. And then early on for me, it was a chocolate fountain.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? So I was watching the Food Network, and I saw this chocolate fountain, and then I did a little bit of research and saw that they were super popular on the East Coast, and every super high end event had a chocolate fountain. So I called my friends that were running the local kind of it's called Event Essentials. It's the local kind of everything rental company. And I was like, hey, are you guys going to buy a chocolate fountain? They're like, no, we talked about it and we are not going to buy one. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to buy one. So if you ever have anybody that's interested, let them know that I've got one. And that was huge. I mean, that was a cash cow. I made so much money on that thing. It was insane.
My sister, who got married in 2003, had a chocolate fountain. I remember that very clearly because who was, I think, 17, 18 at the time, or I don't know, maybe it was 20. I can't even, not doing the math. But I just remember being, what else am I dipping in this thing? This is great. But
right.
So I got to ask,
yeah.
when you have a DJ background, and I think this could parlay into like things like casinos, because it's just a thing you just don't know about.
Yeah.
There's things involved with, like, if I had to do a chocolate fountain now, I'd be like, ooh, okay, you're going to need product. You're going to need electricity. You're going to need someone to manage it. That sounds messy. You're going to have to clean it up. It's got to go back to the warehouse and get clean. Whoa. How do you approach a new service like that and kind of wrap your head around it?
Yeah. So like, I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I had a like back in the olden days when kids used to deliver newspapers, I had a paper route. It was a thing that kids did, and they would deliver the newspapers to people's houses, and they would have to go once a month and collect. And so that taught me very young on, kind of running my own business. And I turned that, my paper route clients into lawn mowing and snow shoveling clients, and just, I learned very early, the point of the story is I learned very early on that the answer is yes. And now what's the question? Right. So I love that philosophy. I teach that to all of my DJs. I teach that to all of my staff. That is the culture of celebrations. So when I started adding those things and I got a phone call about a chocolate fountain and I had no idea what a chocolate fountain was, I was like, yeah, we can do that. And she was like, well, how much is it? And I said, well, it's $550. And she was like, oh, that's a really good price. Does that include the chocolate? And I'm like, okay, she said that's a really good price. No, that doesn't include the chocolate. How much chocolate do you need? Right. And then so, you just roll with it. I had no idea what I was talking about. And she was like, okay, well, I want to book that. And I said, great, awesome. And hung up the phone and then started doing research and figured out how much I had to pay for a chocolate fountain, which was $8,000. By the
Oh
way.
my gosh.
And then immediately, so I bought it and immediately started advertising that I had it, and it was a 21-day shipment before I actually got it, and I had over $10,000 in bookings before it actually arrived into the office.
That is a gold nugget for people that are listening.
So the answer is yes, and then you just figure it out.
A lot of people, and I'm not saying, there's a lot of people will be like, I won't book the chocolate fountain until I have the chocolate fountain, and then I know how to use the chocolate fountain, and and then there's other people who are like Geoffrey, who's like, listen, I already got 10K in the bank from this thing, it's working. And I think it's like it is an entrepreneurial spirit. It's saying yes. It's just like, I would call it recognizing opportunity. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone can see, hey, here's this thing. If I buy it, it's going to be an asset for the company.
Right.
Some people see it and they go, $8,000. Some people see it and they go, $80,000 coming in.
Right. 100%. Yeah, I bet we've made, since I bought that chocolate fountain, I bet we've made $80,000 to $100,000 on it.
Yeah. And it's got to be, at some point it's coming back, right? It's got to come full circle.
We do like 3 or 4. Actually, a really funny story. My chocolate fountain is now kept at a resort that's really close to here. It's called the Kalahari Resort. And I just keep it there because they use it for every Easter brunch and Mother's Day brunch. And, all of the specialty brunches that they have, they use it. And I just let them use it. And if I ever need it, if I ever have a rental, I just call them up and be like, hey, I need to come and pick it up and use it for an event. They're like, okay. But it's a great, again, there's a lesson learned in that also, which is, relationships with other vendors and all of these things are all, there's lessons.
That's what I was about to ask you is the giving of the chocolate fountain that would just be collecting dust in your warehouse. Let's be real. Is the giving of it, I think I know the answer. I think is the giving of it to the venue to let them use it and not charging them, A, helping them, which is awesome. They get to use it because who has a $8,000 chocolate fountain? And then B, they really think of you very highly.
Right.
And when they think they need entertainment or AV or casinos or whatever it might be, who are they calling?
We probably do, not exaggerating, $250,000 worth of business directly related to that venue referring us.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
every year.
Not only did you make money off the chocolate fountain from direct bookings, but it's still going, and it's not even a thing. See, so yeah, the common theme that I've heard, and I'm not looking at the timer of how much long we're recording, but X number of minutes into this podcast, the things that I'm hearing about Geoffrey Sandler repeatedly is recognizing opportunity. Like, I got this thing, I could get rid of it, or I could put it into use that helps me, helps other people, and you're like generating energy out of things that other people might dismiss.
The answer is yes, and then what's the question? Right.
I like that.
I'm going to give you. I'm going to give everybody a huge nugget right here. My favorite definition of an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is somebody who jumps off a cliff and learns how to build an airplane on the way down.
You get it? That's 100% correct.
Right. And sometimes you don't figure it out, and you splash and you crash onto the ground because you couldn't figure out you got one wing, but the other wing, you didn't get it installed in time, and you crashed and you burned and you dusted yourself off, and you went back up to the top of the cliff and you tried again, and you jumped off again. Right. Not every single time you jump off the cliff, it's going to pay off. You're not going to soar every time. But I mean, I love that analogy because the visual of it is so impactful, but it really is true. If you never jump off the cliff, if you never take that jump, you're going to be stuck in the same thing that you do over and over and over again. If you're going to take that leap, and whatever that leap is, right? If it's buying a chocolate fountain, it's buying a photo booth, if it's taking like if it's listening to everybody and saying, oh, this Mark Farrell guy has taught so many DJs and they're all making more money than I am, I wonder if I should maybe go and take a class and take a seminar from Mark Farrell. Like Bill Harmon does this thing. Everybody talks about him. I wonder if I should do that. Like, yes, you should do all of those things.
Yeah. And Geoffrey, like, that I spend a lot of time talking to multi-op owners and business owners and DJ company owners. And I think there's a sense that, even with like blueprint for training, people are like, I got to get it all right before you start. And I just think that, like, if you were to look internally in our company into our actual multi-op, we have tweaked and changed and modified and reinvented training processes like every single time.
Yeah.
Because we're like, we just got to do it. You just got to get out there and do it and try it. And because you're going to learn so much from the implementation,
Right.
you're going to learn so much from getting that first chocolate fountain out that you're like, okay, second chocolate fountain, we figured it out. Third chocolate fountain, it got a little bit better.
Yeah.
You just got to get out there and do it.
Just do it.
Or you do it scared. You just got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's a cool little opening here in this conversation. When you're this chocolate fountain and this this venue, it's probably no different than your work in the nonprofit scene. Talk to me, because this is something I know you're really, really passionate about.
Yeah.
You're giving, and you're positioning yourself with nonprofits to find other ways to generate revenue while you're also helping people. Talk to us about that.
There are two things that have turned my company into a multi-million-dollar company, right? Not just a million-dollar company. There's two things that I attribute to the success, and one of those is working with nonprofits. It doesn't happen overnight. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme, right? Working with nonprofits. It takes time. It is relationship building. But I would not be anywhere close to being as successful as I am with having all of the things that we do, with being able to say, yes, we can do that, and then figuring it out. If it wasn't for that first yes, we can do that, when a nonprofit called me, right? Nonprofits call and they don't know what to ask. So they always ask, will you donate your services, right? Because they don't know what else to ask, right? A bride calls and says, how much are you? A nonprofit calls and says, can I get you for free, right? Yeah. So how you answer that is, again, that entrepreneurial spirit is, how is that going to benefit not only the nonprofit by how I answer that question, but how can it benefit me as well? Because I am a for-profit company, right? So I do need it to benefit. Now, of course, I need to feel good, right? The oxytocin and the serotonin and all of those things that happen when you do a good thing for a good person, that good feeling, right? When you give somebody something, that's an actual chemical reaction to that is important, and that needs to happen. But we're in business to be in business, right? We're in business to pay our mortgages and pay our rent and feed our families and do all of the things that travel, do all of the things that we want to do. So we have to make it beneficial to us. So how can it be beneficial to everybody? And again, this takes time, but saying yes, and then doing that event and being there for them and providing a positive experience for them that they would not be able to get if you weren't involved in that event, right? So you are a professional, you are an MC, you have speakers and microphones and all of these things. Right. Nonprofits need these things, and again, they don't want to necessarily pay for them, but how can you position yourself? So what we started doing is just saying, so we will sponsor those things for you. If you can't find a sponsor for them, then we will do that. And then the other thing is being on the committee, right? Being on the committee, and for me, everything is about relationships, right? Anybody that knows me, anybody that sees me at a trade show, anybody that has any interaction with me knows that, I'm going to ask you how your family's doing. I'm going to ask you how you doing. I want to get to know you as a person. And that's the same thing with dealing with nonprofits, is getting to know who they are, what their mission is, who are they serving, know their story, right? You want to know their story. And then on the committee, you want to know everybody's involvement in. Have you been served by this nonprofit before as someone in the community that needed the services, and that's why you're involved? Are you getting paid from the nonprofit as a development director or whatever? Or is it just in your heart that you want to do good and you chose this now? Like, what's your story? So I'm not sure if I'm going where you wanted me to go, but
No, you are. Yeah.
yeah, the involvement in getting involved with nonprofits is first, like, get involved. I'm going to give you another nugget. Here's another nugget. Everybody thinks about ROI, right? What is ROI? David, what's your answer?
Oh, return on investment.
Return on investment. Everybody thinks it's return on investment. I have a different ROI. My ROI is return on involvement.
Ooh.
Okay. What's your return on involvement? If you can get involved, right? Your investment with that nonprofit is being involved. If you are not involved, have you ever been a member of NACE or MPI or of ALEA or a Chamber of Commerce, or have you ever been on a committee?
Mm-hmm.
And have you ever joined an organization that you're like, yeah, I'm a member of that organization? And then a year and a half, 2 years later, you're like, I'm not going to join up again. It's $400 a year. I'm not getting anything from that organ. I haven't booked a single thing from that. Have you been involved? What is your ROI? Are you getting as much as you gave? And if you give nothing, then you should not expect to get anything in return. So the return on involvement is a huge part of what we do at Celebrations Entertainment.
Okay, that's the level up. That's the big one, because return on involvement. Okay, I just learned something new, everybody, because we do that. I do that personally. I make sure that we call it, so in AV we're providing a service as well. Like, we're helping people plan and get on the committees and help being involved in the calls, and we call it like production management in our company. Like, we have things for it, but it's that je ne sais quoi, right? It's the X factor of saying, it's the next level of networking that gets you beyond the NACE meeting where there's 100 people to the room where there's 5.
Yeah.
And that's where it's advanced networking. You put yourself in the room, you're getting involved because you care about the organization, and you see the potential for the business development in it.
Right.
But you're really being there and really being present, and there's presence over the performance, right? You're like actually trying to be a good person, actually put energy into this organization.
Yeah.
And just by the nature that you're putting out good vibrations, they're going to come back. They're going to echo back to you.
And everybody's going to talk about you.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like irreplaceable. You're basically making yourself irreplaceable. You're saying, Geoffrey has come in. He's helped us 10x how much we've raised because of his involvement. Yep. How could we do this without Geoffrey?
We can't. We cannot do this event without him.
Yeah.
And now instead of you worrying about whether you can donate, like how much you're going to charge them, now you're worried about, are you going to be available the next time they call, right? Yeah. Now you're worried about, they're worried about calling you and checking your schedule before they book the date, because they can't do it without you.
Yes. Now, this is a question that even whatever you answer, it's going to be hard to implement. When you're a listener and you hear this, it's going to be like, that's nice, but okay, you're sponsoring.
Yep.
Or there's in kind, or it's like, we do stuff where it's like, okay, we're going to do it at a reduced cost. We're going to add a sponsorship in, and we're charging something little, but whatever, to kind of start a relationship. How do you know when to move to the smaller sponsorship, bigger invoice, and to like start progressing that relationship along so it is financially beneficial for Celebrations?
Yeah, it's a super easy thing for me because I'm so involved on the committees, right? I have so much involvement on on the committee, that you're part of the decision-making process. You know that you have X amount of sponsors, and you know that X amount of sponsors are not necessarily wanting to be a $10,000 sponsor, but they want to sponsor something, right? So I'm in the committee meeting and I'm like, okay, do you think that they would be a photo booth sponsor? Can we put their logo on the border of the photo booth and put a sign on this photo booth saying photo booth sponsored by Park Bank?
Yeah.
Because that's going to be a $2,000 sponsorship instead of a $10,000 presenting sponsor or whatever, right? Whatever that is. So being involved on the committee, it really gives you that insight on how much the nonprofit has, how many sponsorship levels they have, how many sponsors they have, and then how much I need to sponsor and how important it is for me to sponsor something, right? And then what makes the most sense for me to sponsor it, right? Am I trying to, here's a really good nugget. I just bought a 360 photo booth 2 or 3 years ago. Nobody knew that I had it. I wanted to get it out there. So now I was the 360 photo booth sponsor at all of these fundraisers. They wouldn't have done it because nobody knew what a 360 booth was. Yeah. But I'm in the committee meetings and I'm like, oh, we should do a 360 booth. We actually just bought one. Can I sponsor that? And they're like, oh yeah, well, how much is that? And I said, well, it's $1,200, but I'll write you a check back for $1,200 for it. So now I'm not an in-kind. Here's another huge nugget. Are you ready for this one? In-kind sponsors have a little teeny line at the bottom of the program and at the bottom of the 10th slide that they're running through, a teeny in-kind with just the name of your company. The actual sponsors get their logo and typically a separate slide. So I am now the photo booth sponsor instead of an in-kind sponsor for the photo booth. Huge difference, right? I charge them $1,200. So everybody that is on the committee knows that it's $1,200 because when their daughter gets married or when their company has a holiday party or when they're talking to somebody about their other, event that they're going to or the other committee that they're on, it's not, oh, let's call Geoffrey, he'll do that for free. It's, oh, I know that that's $1,200, but you can ask him if, he can do it for less or something like that. So the value is there. So it's really, really important that you don't do in-kind sponsorships anymore. Be the sponsor of that item instead of being the in-kind sponsor.
Would you say in-kind sponsorships is probably one of the biggest mistakes that DJ companies make when they're approaching nonprofit work?
I do. I do. I think that, and it's not just DJ companies, right? I see florists doing it all the time. I see balloon companies doing it all the time. The in-kind sponsorships, it's going to be, you just get your name. Like you don't get a logo. And if the nonprofit is really good about taking care of their sponsors, they're going to put it on their website. They're going to put it on the bidding software. And all of those things are clickable, right? Mm-hmm. They're all linkable and clickable. So now my logo on their website as the photo booth sponsor or as the auction sponsor or as the, whatever it is, chocolate fountain sponsor, right? Now I'm the sponsor of that thing. People know that I just in kind. They don't know what I do. They just see the name Celebrations Entertainment. But if I'm the photo booth sponsor, they're like, oh, they must have a photo booth.
Do you think a key to that, and I'm asking for me because this is great. I mean, if the listeners get something out of this, wonderful. I'm curious here. But are you saying that like the right back of the check, they're paying you and then you're paying them. That is the thing that makes you the photo booth sponsor. Because otherwise, if it's just an in-kind sponsorship,
yes,
that's the delineation, is the actual transfer of money back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, make them pay for it. Put it on the invoice.
That, my friends, that's an actionable gold nugget for you right there, because it's one of those mechanical operational differences that sometimes make all the difference in the world. And while you were talking about this, it's I've seen this in other environments where it's almost like you have a captive audience being on a committee to educate your future market.
Yeah.
I mean, we all talk about this in the DJ industry. Man, why don't these brides or why don't these couples know my value? Why don't they know how much I cost or what we do or blah, blah, blah. And you're like, I just wish I could like teach them and be like, this is what we do. This is why it's so good. And you're like, you can't, and you are sitting in a room with people who are interested and trust you. They know, like, and trust you. And you're like, listen, I'm going to teach you the value of these services.
Right.
And then when you're on another committee in 2 years, this other person, they're going to they're going to spread it. And they're going to know you're, oh man, that's so smart.
And all of those people in that room now got a guy, right? You want to be the guy that everybody's got, right? When somebody says, hey, I need a photo booth. You got a guy? Yeah, I got a guy.
Yeah. You want to be the guy.
You want to be the guy. I'm the guy. Right?
Another operational question, like the difference between being on a committee versus being on a board.
Yes, sir.
What is the difference? What does that mean differently to you?
So a board is more operational, making decisions for the nonprofit as a whole, right? Like I'm the current president of our NACE chapter here in Madison. That is a board that meets once a month, and we make decisions based on the entire chapter of, right? I sit on a board of a couple other nonprofits where I'm helping the board make decisions of the entire goal of the nonprofit. A committee is very specifically just for that one event. It's that you're on the gala committee. I don't necessarily recommend, if you're just starting out with nonprofits, to ask to be on boards. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. I do sit on a couple boards, but it's very time consuming, and it doesn't necessarily give you as much benefit as being on the committee. The committee of a gala are very like-minded, very goal-oriented, very specific relationship type people that you're going to make the biggest amount of impact being on the gala committee.
Do you find getting on the committee, well, not now, because I'm sure you've got a reputation where people know you and you've got multiple layers deep of relationships that they're like, oh, Geoffrey, yeah, get on it. Come on, get on here. But when you're first starting out, how do you get on that first committee?
It's so easy. You just ask to be on the committee, and they're like, what? You want to be on our committee? And you're like, yeah. Do you have any other event people on your committee? No. Oh, I would love to be the event guy on your committee, because then when you're talking about the flow of the event, right? We all do weddings. We know that there's a flow. We know that there's different chapters to a day. We know how to move people through space and time. That's what we do. Even though you maybe don't know how to verbalize that that's what you do, that's what you do. You move people through space and time.
Yeah.
And at a gala, that's what you need to do. Just like a wedding has a ceremony, a cocktail hour, dinner, speeches, and a dance, a gala has a registration, arrival, cocktail hour, silent auction, program, live auction, paddle raise, and then after party, right? And how do you move those people from all of those different chapters? How do you move all of the guests through space and time? You use your voice, just like you do at a wedding. You use your people skills, just like you do at a wedding. You've already done all of this. You're just translating it to a nonprofit gala instead of a wedding. You already have the skills.
Bingo. Geoffrey, this has been, now, I was expecting this to be good. This has been even better.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
So thank you for sharing some time with us today. I think anyone who hasn't known you already, I'm glad they got a chance to listen to you speak and hear a lot about how smart you are. Tell everybody how they can find you or connect with you online.
Yeah, I'm an open book. So Geoffrey Sandler on LinkedIn, Geoffrey Sandler on Instagram, Geoffrey Sandler on Facebook. I spell it Geoffrey. And then Sandler, just like Adam. So connect with me. I'd love to. I do this a lot. Like I will sit and have a conversation with somebody from across the country who just is having a problem and wants to do more nonprofits. I love sharing. Right.
Yeah. You want to be the guy. You're going to be the guy.
I'm going to be the guy.
He's the guy.
Right.
Well, thank you, everybody. As always, free resources at blueprintlearn.com/resources. And we'll see you on the next one.